Simon, welcome to the podcast.
G'day, Gareth. How are you, mate?
Good, thank you. I guess our connection goes back, 12 years or so now, where I was the director of football at Coastal Spirit, and you were one of the board members. So I guess one of my bosses. So it's glad that we've been able to keep some sort of relationship, and I'm glad to have you on the podcast today, speaking with a parent hat on for once.
Yeah, you don't want my over 45s football hat on, that's for sure.
I don't know. I'm sure there's some good advice from there as well. So for our listeners, as a father of four kids, different age range, all involved with sport at a different type of level, but more so probably from my connection through you would be your oldest son, which is Liam. So Liam being a football player from Christchurch, initially at Coastal Spirit. He was one of the younger players that we were able to bring through the youth team into the first team quite early. And the last time I probably saw him play in person would have been at an under-19 tournament where he would have represented Coastal before I moved on up to Auckland and kind of lost track of his journey. But maybe just for the sake of a bit of a timeline, maybe provide a little bit of context around his playing journey pick up from that stage through to where he is now.
Yeah, sure. I think Liam first got a taste of first team football in Christchurch when he was still 14, actually, and he was offered an opportunity to go and live at the All Football Academy in Wellington. So he finished his schooling up there and suffered a serious injury, played first team football in Central League, and was in the talent ID squads for New Zealand football run and under 17 sort of pre-World Cup meets and what have you, and had a very serious injury, and came back from that after a long time to get a contract and play National League for Canterbury United, and then another season after that with Coastal in the senior men's team. Since left New Zealand and came over to Sydney, where he started studying at college, at Australian College of Physical Ed, doing a sports management and S&C degree, and has been coaching at various organisations, including Western Sydney Wanderers with their under-15 team, local New South Wales NPL side, Mountain United, looking after their junior grades, and since then is now running a football business, coaching a couple of club teams, and he's operating as a TD for that business, doing some private one-on-one stuff with kids who are striving to make Sydney and Western Sydney Wanderers sort of academy teams as well.
Yeah, but that's a journey in itself, and probably one that a lot of athletes have experienced. I'm pointing specifically to that bigger injury that kind of curtailed that growth of his development as a football player. But great to see he's still involved in the game. We'll circle back to his journey shortly, but just keen to get to learn a little bit more about your path, I guess, talking about business more so than coaching, but certainly involved in sport. And I can see you've got the Manly Sea Eagles polo shirt on, so there must be something special there. But if you can give me a bit of a walk-through timeline of your journey through sport and business.
Yeah. So my early career was in advertising and marketing, and I through that got involved with a number of sporting sponsorships. I worked for DB at one point, and there was a lot of sports that DB obviously was part of, everything from franchises like the Crusaders and various NPC rugby teams, but also a range of other activities. Likewise, when I was at MacPac, involved in adventure racing and sports sponsorship and people achieving incredible things in their world, and ran my own business, and then when I moved back to Australia, I decided to, after doing a lot of thousands of hours of work as a volunteer for the sports clubs, decided that my path really lay in using those sales and marketing skills for the community. So I've been working for the last 10 years in the charitable sector, for children's charities primarily, and also disability charities, and have also through that been involved with a lot of sporting activities and initiatives and recently started a role as head of foundation at the Manly Sea Eagles.
So there'll be a lot of listeners here who are, not football context specific, but certainly sport and certainly business and management. So, yeah, through your, vast experiences across sort of both industries, what are the key crossovers? What's transferable? What skill sets, what personalities that you see are really transferable in a positive light for people in either
Yeah,
coaching roles or management roles.
yeah, and something I've led teams for a number of years, G, and it is in the business world. There's a lot. I'm using sport analogies all the time, or thinking from a sporting context. I'm starting in a position with a group of people, and I'm trying to move somewhere else with that same group of people. They've all got their strengths and weaknesses. They've all got their roles to play, but they've also got to work as a team, which is exactly what football coaching is, right? So, I just put on my sort of, football or futsal coaching and remember what I did with, 10, 11-year-olds and try to apply it to in the business world. And it seems to have done okay so far, but it is really everyone understanding where they're going together and their role in it and how we work as a team, recognizing we're not going to win every day of the week. There'll be times when we try stuff, it doesn't work, so love to fail fast and take the learnings and move on, but also celebrate the successes when they're there as well. That's important too.
Yeah, brilliant. You mentioned futsal. I know your background very, very well from futsal as a coach. You've seen your kids come through that as well. Speaking now linked back to football, or maybe some other codes as well. But what's your take on futsal as a development tool for young aspiring football players, or again other codes? Is there some transferability, from
Yeah,
movement patterns and balance and pattern recognition? Or what's your take on
yep.
futsal?
Yeah, no, I love futsal. The best thing about futsal is it makes you think fast. Yeah, you can play fast, but it makes you think fast. It's such a high intensity game that you have to have great self awareness in terms of just time and space and movement. And there's nowhere to hide on a futsal court from the goalkeeper, and the goalkeeper plays a much more active role, say, than an outfield goalkeeper on a football field. And so the whole team is subs happening on a regular basis. So, the whole squad is involved. And from a football perspective, ball mastery, you don't have kids with big bouncy balls on lumpy, grassy, bits of park turf and what have you. You've got a flat surface. So they get ball mastery skills really, really quickly. They get very confident and comfortable with ball at feet. So that when you take them onto a bigger arena, they've got heaps of time and space. So I love that about the game, and it's the same whether it continues, through the round ball game or into other team sports. The same principles apply, right? Time and space and movement and teamwork, and whether it's basketball or handball or touch footy. So big advocate of futsal, was involved pretty early on in the days in Christchurch, and it's fantastic to see a lot of kids that I knew playing futsal when they were 7, 8, 9 years old, playing professionally in Europe now. And part of that, I definitely put down to the part that futsal played in their development.
Yeah, any sort of invasion game on a rectangular pitch or field or court kind of has the shared principles, right? Of we're trying to attack your space and your zone. You're trying to defend that in certain areas. And I really enjoyed getting into hockey or field hockey when I was in Christchurch, and spent a bit of time with their field hockey coach as well, and just tried to take some of those learnings and apply it back to football. And someone who's coached, and I must admit, futsal is not something I've been able to get my time into too much, but certainly seen a lot of players benefit from it. But from a coaching perspective, so somebody who's coached football and futsal, how did one help the other? I guess, or did one help one other more than the other way around?
Yeah, it did actually. It did. I think futsal really taught me the benefit of your bench and your squad, because the game is so fast. You have to relieve players. They're tiring, and if they're tiring, they'll be attacked, and there's an issue. So you've got to rely on your bench to come on. And I think futsal taught me when I was playing football that the bench is as important. You can't win a game without a squad, or a season without a squad. And I think that was one of the biggest lessons that futsal actually taught me, because of the pace and intensity of the game, that you couldn't rely on a first team with some bench players. It was everyone was a player, and that was one of my biggest takeaways that futsal taught.
Cool. So bringing it back to I guess your role as a parent, and we use Liam as sort of our case study. He started off as junior football and got an early taste of local senior football, which is not nothing to be sneezed at, but he's quite quickly moved on from there into some other more performance environments. You mentioned around the national age group identification camps. He played for Canterbury United, which for context is I guess a semi-professional organisation. And did NTC national camps. Went to Ole, went across to the Milk Cup in Ireland as a guest player. Obviously a lot of that stuff is very fills you with pride, and there's probably also some trepidation, and probably a lot of money also goes out as a parent. But I guess up to this point, right? So pre-injury, what are some of the things that you've looked back on, with your sort of greatest memories or even learnings around things that you believed helped Liam on that journey that you made a positive impact from?
Yeah, I guess Liam grew up in a family of 6, 3 siblings, all playing sport. They all played cricket during summer and football and futsal, and there was always something going on in the backyard or the front yard, or up the local park. And for Liam, he was always someone who loved the social side of things. He always a communicator and always loved his mates. And somewhere along the line, I guess he grew up in a family environment which placed a great deal of importance on moderation, which is probably sometimes at odds with high level sporting environments. And so I guess for Liam, he was able to enjoy the process, enjoy the journey, and with mixed in with enough grit and determination and dedication, but also with a certain lightness as well. And always in that context of he had something to learn as a boy and as a teenager and a young man. It just happened to be in a high performance sporting environment. So I guess that's something that was one of the things for Liam, that every experience he had, whether it was going to Northern Ireland with the Milk Cup team, or whether it was leaving home at 15 to go to Ole, or repping for Canterbury, wearing the red and black, it was always an experience that he soaked up, and really enjoyed, and somewhere, he sort of recognized that this was all adding to whatever his life was going to become.
What was that like as a parent when your son says, "Oh, I want to go to a different part of the country, a different island," at 15, mid-high school? Leave his circle of influence, his circle of support, and go, chase the next stage, I guess, in his dream to become a professional footballer. What was that like?
Really hard. Really, one of the biggest decisions we've made as a family. It was clear that Liam had a bit of talent, and other people recognised that. The Knicks offered him an opportunity. We couldn't afford the Knicks, but there was some good stuff happening at another academy at Ole, and so when we investigated that, and I think actually, Gareth, I think you made the original introduction. It was a really big call, because he was, still a growing boy, and still, we would see him at home and playing, card games with his sisters in front of the fire, or kicking a ball around with his older brother in the backyard, and so he's an important part of family, and to take a 14, 15-year-old out of family to follow effectively a dream was a really big call, and not just on the family dynamics and the psychosocial kind of dynamics of the family, but financially as well, and also a range of other things which, as a parent, you're concerned about. The environment that you go into, and he had to learn things himself, which he did without having a family environment as simple as finishing school or getting your driver's license. So it was a big decision, filled with lots of trepidation, but one that looking back, we're really happy that we all made.
So no doubt you've done a lot of due diligence on selecting that specific environment. So one of the big challenges I've experienced in the last sort of 7 or 8 years trying to help develop players and move them off into overseas environments is that support that we can continue providing them when they're sort of not under our duty of care. So the research and the preparation and the relationship building and making sure that everybody has their eyes wide open before they go into whatever decision they make. So just speaking to other parents now, what sort of steps did you go through, and what were the key markers that you were looking for that this environment ticked those boxes? What was important for you?
So we made a site visit and spoke to the staff and the players who were there. Got a feel for not just how the day-to-day and week-to-week sort of ran, but also some of the things that they were doing in terms of wrapping around that duty of care, with that duty of care in mind, the non-football aspect of things. And that was a really important part of our decision. And we felt that there were some great people involved with some US college and also professional European sort of footballing background, mixed in with sort of a bunch of effectively Kiwi boys at the time, and latterly boys and girls. And I think that getting a feel for the vibe, you do have to trust your intuition to some degree as when you're doing due diligence. But there was a bit of enough for us to go, yeah, this feels right, to give it a go. And so, seeing the environment into which they were going, getting an understanding of how it worked, and seeing what they were doing outside of the football environment in the community, school-wise as well, was important factors for us. And it did seem, I've just written something in my role now in terms of junior players here, in terms of from a duty of care perspective, the holistic approach in terms of wrapping around all the support that's required to give kids the best opportunity to achieve their dreams.
For me, my opinion is, going back to, you mentioned before, playing multiple sports. I think if we're talking about duty of care to young developing athletes, yes, there needs to be some consideration to specialization, and you can't only do 1 hour of football and become a world-class footballer. There's got to be a balance of volume into a specific set of skills. But I'm a believer of having some diversity, having some freshness. You spoke about cricket and some other sports and that social piece. What's your take on that, having seen kids go through that at different sports as well? You obviously work in rugby league at the minute, and what's rugby league's take on diversity of different actions and motor patterns as well as socialization?
Yeah, there's the body of research will tell you, I think, particularly in Australia, and rugby league is probably a good example, is that some of the best players coming out of regional towns in Australia play multitude of sports till quite a late period of development. I know Liam and Maeve, they both played rep football, futsal, and cricket, and it gives a break from a season, if you like, even though a lot of the time that season is 45, 50 weeks a year. But there's another focus for a period of time, as well as different coaches. Hearing a different voice is really important. Being surrounded by a different group where you might be have a certain status in one team, in another team it's a different status altogether. And I think that's healthy. I talked earlier about moderation and balance, and I think that's one of the challenges in the professional environment is how do you achieve that for each individual? It's different for everyone. But I think that having a range of voices, a range of team experiences is a positive thing.
I get parents quite often, ring me or email me and kind of at a loss. They're struggling to. I think they feel that that's not a bad option to have some diversity, but they're under a lot of pressure from clubs, from TDs, from their coach to say, no, we need to have you training only with us, not even in another football environment, let alone another code. So, maybe New Zealand's a little bit different, or maybe you took a different approach as parents. I'm trying to advocate for parents to have the confidence to have these honest conversations and almost say, no, this is what we're going to do. We as the collective, we, the parent and the athlete, and go, this is our plan. If you want us part of your environment, then, again, let's get on the same page. It's not, dictate to one another, but rather than kind of just, going with what the club or the TD or the coach sort of sets out. Like, how did you navigate that through your role as a parent?
Can of worms there, mate. School versus club, that whole conundrum is really hard. Liam didn't go to a school that enforced that hard, and I think that helped. But when he certainly got to another level of environment, Ole, he was only in an Ole environment at that level, but that's a fairly relatively high level. I think when they're still developing their sets of skills and their interests, it's hard as a parent because you've got a coach or a club telling you something. We've only got a certain number of opportunities. You've got to make a decision now, but it's our way or the highway sort of thing. I think you've got to find a way as a parent to step back and think what's important for your child. Your child better than the coach, better than the school, better than the TD, and you've got to think what's right for that young boy or girl, and what's right for their happiness. One of the things I'll possibly get to later, but is we took the view that every opportunity that comes along was a learning opportunity and wasn't going to add to the young person's overall richness, in terms of of learning, as opposed to focusing just down too much in just one theme or one club or one it might be or one coach even. So from a parental perspective, really step back from the narrative or the energy that might be coming at you, and step back and say, hey, what's best for this young person?
At what point did Liam or Maeve or whoever else come into that conversation and that decision making process?
Pretty early, because they're part of it, and they've got to be considered in the mix as well. And it's at the end of the day, it's their life, and there comes a point with your kids where you control all of it when they're younger, and then less and less progressively as they get older. And there's every family will have their own way of doing that. For us, it was very much a group decision in terms of like, hey, what do you want to do? But providing some perspective, I guess, for the young person that an adult may have, so that we come to a group decision. Here are the pros, here are the cons. You do this, pros and cons, do that, pros and cons. I think for different groups of parents, that would be hard though, Gareth, because not every parent comes from a sporting background, so not every parent has coached a football team, not every parent is involved in school sport. Their thing might have been drama or the arts or STEM or something. So I think that's hard for parents from a non-sporting background to evaluate what's the right thing. But again, go back to your earlier point: do your due diligence and trust your instincts on what's best for your son or daughter.
So one of the big pieces of Liam's journey is his injury. So it's something that not every parent will go through, but many have, and many will as well. How did that come about? Firstly, what kind of, think back to that time, what did your role shift a little bit? Obviously Liam would have been devastated, and how did, I guess, you help navigate him through that tricky time? And did a point come where playing now no longer became the focus, and he's gone on to do some amazing, and he's still doing amazing things. He's started his own business, which is incredible as well. He's still only a young man. So yeah, it just takes back to maybe that point and you know, the role that parents play around big injuries and big disappointments.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a big one for him to learn from. You know, he was in the mix for, you know, under 17, you know, national squad selection, and you know, in playing first team football in Central League with Western Suburbs and LA, and he started developing you know, this uh, knee problem, which is osteochondritis dissecans, which is essentially the end of the tibia bone breaks off, and it has to be operated on to screw it back together, essentially. So, in an environment where he was really striving hard, you know, in an environment which was stretching him, and you know, he had you know, big goals to achieve. Yeah, he was struck down, and you know, had to come back from that and find a way to come back from that in an environment which wasn't. He wasn't at home. He was living in Wellington. So we had to make a decision about whether he rehabbed it back at home in Christchurch or stayed in Wellington. And you know, again, we spoke, you know, with the coaches and the management staff there, and thought that it would be best to stay in the football environment, the high performance environment, because there's plenty of other things he could do while he was injured, which would help the team and keep him connected to that team. So that's the decision we made, and he found the wherewithal to come back from that. And as I said, you know, post his injury, you know, we ended up signing a contract for Canterbury and playing at that level in that environment. But it did mean the end of his professional ambitions. You know, knowing that, you know, he could really never be get through the medical he would be required to get through in a professional environment. So it did give him, though, pause for thought, I think, in terms of some non-football related goals and dreams and plan Bs, if you like. And that, in a way, it's not a bad thing to be thinking of, you know, because as we all know, you know, you can have a career-ending injury, you know, training this afternoon. So that gave him, I think, some pause for thought, and he got into, I think, at that point, doing some work with the coaches on analysis and coaching. He was in an environment where they were coaching younger players coming through anyway. But it was interesting when he decided to hang up the boots from a serious perspective, that he decided to pursue something in the coaching young players environment. And I put that down to all the collective experiences he's had from all the coaches who, you know, are part of Liam's journey, that they've left an impression on him collectively. When that he still loves the game. You know, I mean, he wouldn't be doing it if he didn't love the game. And I think that's really important, that, you know, coaches remember that, you know, coaches are always they've got their own journey that they're on, obviously, and their own goals and dreams. But always remember, you know, you want to leave a player better than you found him or her. And whether that's tactically, you know, or in a skill sense, or as a better person, right? You know, socially, you know, I think that's really important. And I think, you know, it's credit to all the coaches that have been involved in Liam's development that he is doing stuff he loves every day.
Yeah, brilliant. You said collective experiences, and I can't agree any more than that. I think everything we do, and, you know, strive is the name of this. We're striving for a goal which may or may not come to fruition, but it's something that we're actively working towards. And I think one of the big things that we miss is that diversity of experience. It doesn't have to be diversity of different sports, but different set of experiences, different set of coaches, different environments, different age groups. You know, Liam had an injury, but he was still involved in the game in different roles, right? He was involved with some analysis work and some individual preparation, and you know, all of that kind of gives you a different lens to look through. And I felt I became a better player when I started coaching, because I could see things a little bit different. I, would speak with coaches around technical framework and space, and just open my eyes to, probably too late in my career to make a pointed difference, but certainly felt I became a more intelligent football player once I started coaching as well. So yeah, collective experience.
I know Liam's, I've spoken to Liam about his injury and how it affects his coaching now. And so, when a player has an injury, perhaps, as serious as his or not, he's got something to add. He's got something to offer from his personal experience as well. So it is a collective experience of his own. Hey, I got back and I still played at a high level. After my injury. So if that's what you want to do, it can be done. But I think it is that collective experience, and from the coaches, the environments you're in, and the things you go through, the wins, the losses, the highs and the lows.
Well, we've spoken a little bit, well, a lot actually, around different situations and scenarios and ideas and concepts that, as a parent speaking to other parents, that they need to be aware of and consider how they would approach certain things, because every person will parent differently. But is any sort of lasting sort of advice or feedback to parents you want to give, or potentially parents of of kids who have a non-sporting background themselves? You started to talk around, what could the principles that they could approach these difficult conversations, the due diligence, for example, and I guess, what else is on your mind that you think you can share?
You certainly got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. There's no predetermined goal, really. You've got to get comfortable with the goal. The goalposts will shift all the time. You got to get comfortable with that the end result might not be the mountain you're climbing. It's another mountain or in another sphere. You've just got to get comfortable that it's a journey going somewhere, but it's not sure where the end result is. You have a vague idea, and you've got to really, as a parent, always, I think, keep in mind that your child is going through this journey first and foremost, and that as a parent, your role is to support them as best you can in that journey. But part of the supporting is knowing that it may change, or that it will have its, it's not a linear journey. It's an up and down thing, or a roundabout thing, even, or one step forward, two steps back. So it's getting comfortable in that space of not being sure where it's going, and opportunities will come up. An academy opportunity, a tournament trip, opportunity to train with the first team, and as a parent, you've got to consider what's right. Is my child ready to play in an adult environment? Or at what level can they be introduced? And that's hard, and that's where I think, in something that the sports generally, I think, from my experience, can do better is trying to get the player, the parent, and the coach on the same page around expectations for now, because in the future things will change. But for now, for this season, maybe as the preseason talk or something like that, just so everyone's on the same page, so everyone's supporting each other in that. And you start off by saying, the parents have a big influence, and they do, because generally, unless a young person's away in a living environment, then every trip to and from training or at home on the weekend, downtime or post match or whatever, is an opportunity to not so much talk about the game, but just be aware of what the coach is trying to achieve. I think the more a parent understands what a team, what a coach is trying to achieve, and the role of their son or daughter in it, the more you can support your child in that. Now, that's as the child grows and understands perhaps the game even better than the parent, they have a sense of that. But certainly when they're younger, I think it's really important for that kind of communication to happen.
Yeah, you speak about it's their journey at the end of the day. There's a great quote, I'll probably butcher it, but the path will appear once the journey begins, or it's along those lines. You don't necessarily need to know exactly the path before you start. Correct. Just start, and then eventually the path will appear.
Exactly.
What about and one of the big reasons around why I'm doing this podcast is to get parents like yourself to speak to other parents, but also to speak to coaches and to athletes. So, because quite often, athletes don't listen necessarily or believe that mum or dad know what they're talking about. So have other parents sort of say probably highly likely similar sort of things, kind of reinforces that message. So I guess speaking to the athletes listening to this, what is the advice that you would give a younger version of Liam 10 years ago, or somebody like him who's going through whatever sport they're in. They're in a representative team, they've in the development squads, they might have made a national age group sort of position, and they're really on that journey successfully and healthy towards the Olympics in 4, 5, 6 years, or a professional contract. What sort of advice would you be giving those sort of athletes listening in?
I think it's simply to remember why you fell in love with the game. When a young kid starts kicking a ball around, they're in love with the ball, they're in love with the motion, they're in love with the mastery, they're in love with the game. And as you go up through the ranks and you get into ever more serious environments, recognize that every opportunity, every training session, every opportunity that comes along is a growing opportunity for you as a person. And you'll be a person probably a lot longer than you are playing the game. So just remember that your sport's part of life, not necessarily the other way around, as much as some might say it's not. But I think it really is to the player. It's like, these are great opportunities that you've been given that not everyone has. Your parents have probably sacrificed something which you may or may not be aware of. Certainly time, if nothing else, money for sure. And just be grateful. Be grateful for the opportunity you have to grow as a person, to learn from this experience. And if it goes somewhere aligned to football, fantastic. But if it doesn't, it's okay too.
Yeah. No, great words. You started off also by talking around, the why. Why did you start something? And it's the love of whatever the activity is. And I think us as coaches, are custodians of that athlete for only a short period of time. It could be within the week, or it could be within a certain number of years. But I think our job is to firstly stoke the fire, and then not to let it go out. I see too many kids lose interest and move away from a chosen sport for their own reason, which is fine. But too often it's because that fire gets allowed to die out. I think our role as youth developers is to make sure it's started initially, and then keep it stoked and keep it going until the athlete moves on to the next coach at the next stage. And hopefully that the bigger that burning fire is, the greater the starting point, because it's super, super important. What about then, if you've changed the lens a little bit now, speaking to people like myself, coaches who are working with your son or daughter for a much smaller period of time than what you as a dad would be able to influence them as well, but still we have a important role to play, not only in terms of developing the code, the sport specific stuff, but hopefully the adolescent and the maturity and grown into from a young adult into an adult. But too often we don't ask the parents these sorts of questions. So this, again, chance for coaches listening to have a parent of an athlete that's gone through this sort of stage. What maybe some anecdotes. What has been some things that you have said or haven't said, or you wish you would have said, or asked the question of coaches. I don't know. Take that wherever you want to take it.
Yeah. I think most coaches sort of recognise that they're part of a chain in terms of a player's development. I think from a skills development perspective, I think they're certainly aware of that. And they're looking to add their layer to it, appropriate to where they are in their development phase, I guess. So I think coaches recognise that in a football environment. I think it's important to recognise maturation at different levels, whether it's pre-teen, teen, or sort of late teen, early adult. I think we all learn by failing, and some of those failures are not always football related, and so or sport related directly. And I think there's a role there for coaches to think about where this person is in front of me, as opposed to where this athlete is in front of me. Who is this? Who is this person? Who is this young Liam in front of me? I can see he's a a ball playing midfielder or whatever it might be, but who is the person? Yeah, I think, and the more, and I know from we talked a little bit about business and sport before, and I know I related it. Leading a team is like not just the skills they have, Gareth, but also who are they as a person? Like, do I know what their upbringing is? Do I know what their family environment is? Do I know what they do after they go home? What they do on the weekends? So the more I know someone as a person, I think the more I can coach or lead them, because we've all seen it, I guess, in a football environment. We all know that different people are motivated by different things and motivated in different ways. So I think the more you know the person in front of you, the more you can coach them, and the more you can help them achieve whatever it is that they're able to achieve while they're under your care.
Can you think back to any, positive examples or maybe some negative examples, if you want to share those, around coaches over the years that have done this really, really well, and brought you and your wife along the journey, or similarly, cut you out potentially at the expense of retainment or success or whatever?
Well, I'll give you two examples, and I hate to think if they're both listening at some point, but it's fair enough. I think Declan Edge at Ole did a good job with Liam in terms of getting to know him as a person, and also getting to know the family, like getting to know that he was educated at a through Steiner education, at a slightly different kind of schooling, and getting to know a little bit about he'd grown up in the environment he'd grown up in, and I think that helped him with his communication with Liam. Because at the end of the day, as a coach of a young athlete, if you can't communicate with them, if you can't find that level of connection, then how do you do anything, right? So I think he did a good job on that. I think that came to the fore, particularly when he had his injury. Whereas I contrast that with another coach, Willie Gerson, who I don't think really got to know Liam as a person, bring him into what he was thinking about his development, and what have you. So that's an example, I think, where Liam did lose the love a little bit. And I think it's again, I think it's something that is an opportunity missed, just to help with his understanding of where he was at. Thankfully, that wasn't an exit point from the game for Liam. I think that's really important. He went back to Coastal, played first team with Coastal in a crazy environment that Eagle had that year, which was great, like a fantastic environment. I think they did really well. Just a couple of different contrasts there. And I think, as a coach, you'll have something in your head about what you're trying to achieve, this season, for example, or with a particular group of players. My background is storytelling, professionally. I'm a storyteller. And if you can't communicate with someone, knowing who the audience is, then how can you take them on that journey? So I think that's something that, if coaches can get their heads around the human in front of them, the young boy, the young girl, the young adult, rather necessarily than the winger or the goalkeeper, I think that'd be a good thing.
Yeah, brilliant. That's fantastic advice. Right, let's wrap this up. Quick fire questions.
Sure.
Hope you've had a bit of preparation on these. So, pose a question for the week for the audience.
Question for the week is, on reflection, with what you're doing at the moment, are you leaving something better than you found it? And leave it better than you found it is a quote that came from Sir Robert Baden-Powell, who is a British military officer and also the founder of the modern Scout movement. But leave it better than you found it is the thing to reflect on for the week.
Yeah, brilliant. Something the All Blacks preach very heavily as well. provide a idea or a concept you've come across that you are either thinking about or have applied recently or applied in the past that you think is worth sharing?
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people listening to this will know this one. Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset. Yeah. For me, that's been really something that's resonated in terms of that lifelong learning, being malleable, having that open mindset, not a fixed mindset, where I can learn from something, be that something great or something not so great, it really does show as you go through life. I think that it's never too late to learn, and if you're can have that mindset, then that's a great thing.
You can teach old dogs new tricks. Is that what you're saying?
You can.
Brilliant. Read, watch, listen. Give me a recommendation for either.
Yeah, I came to this. I came to this one late. This book late. I'm sure your New Zealand listeners will know it well. Belonging by Owen Eastwood. For those who maybe don't know so much about the New Zealand Maori story of whakapapa and kaitiaki guardianship, but it really is recognising, as I said, I'm a storyteller. Know your story. If you know what your story is, if you know from where you've come, then you can have a sense of what your role is in this life as we go through it. And great book to read for any sport. The author has been involved with many fantastic sporting environments, and always comes back to that principle of knowing why, knowing what you're about.
Yeah, second time someone's recommended Belonging by Owen Eastwood. Also great for business and non-sport related contexts as well.
Indeed.
I think.
Yeah.
So just on that, I guess the next question is, if you could wave a magic wand around and change one thing within, your context. So you are kind of in a unique position of it's a sport context, but also a business context. What would be that one thing, that process or mentality that you would shift or change?
I think it is. We sort of touched on it before. I think it's having the coach, the player, and the parent on the same page, because things change through a season, injuries. You're constantly reevaluating what your goals are for the season, I suppose, in a way, or adjusting them. And I think that the more that those three parties can be on the same page and have an understanding of it, the more that everyone can support the journey for that period of time that it might be. And I take that from the youngest levels, Gareth, through to senior levels as well.
Give us one piece of advice that has been given to you, either passed down through generations or from a mentor or somebody you've come across.
Yeah, it's a non-sporting one, actually. Part of my career was working for a fair trade organisation called Trade Aid in New Zealand, and I was lucky enough to go to spend some time in India working with some of the groups that we were helping there in terms of poverty alleviation. And I really resonate with Mahatma Gandhi's quote: "Be the change that you wish to see in the world." So we're talking about a lot of stuff here. And if we go away and finish this podcast and aren't then doing it, then I think we need to get out of that mirror and have a good hard look.
Brilliant. And finish with a quote, unless you want to double down on Mahatma Gandhi.
Oh, Mahatma was my one. I think I'd go that: be the change you wish to see.
Perfect. Hey, Simon, I really appreciate your time. Speaking through the lens of a parent is a really special one for me. I think we don't do it enough. It's kind of one of my aims, is to bring more of this part of the conversation to life. And certainly parents listening would have, had a chance to look at or listen to some of the insights and some of the considerations that parents are required to kind of go through. And some are going through that right now, and some, hopefully it's not far around the corner, but hopefully this has helped them be more aware of some of those considerations, and certainly as coaches and a little bit towards athletes around, what is it like from a dad watching his son on the sidelines, but not only that, it's the car ride home, it's the other hours at home where you have a great level of influence and impact, both positively and potentially negative, that I think we need to take a little bit more time to consider the role that the parent plays. And just be aware of it, and try and bring you along that journey as much as we possibly can. So yeah, I think
and just remember, it's in that context, Gareth. It's just remembering that we're not only growing young sports people, we're growing young men and women. And if there's nothing else, just that consciousness that's what we need to remember.
perfect. Much appreciated.
Oh, good, mate.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for sticking through to the end of this episode. It would mean the world to us if you could hit the like or share button so we can get these amazing insights out to other like-minded coaches, athletes, and parents. Cheers.